Today we're going to be ranking every single Tag Team GX Pokemon released in the year 2019. We're going to be ranking them today based on how much I like them. Not based on artwork, not based on strictly playability, though I am both a player and a collector. If you like these tier list videos, do be sure to subscribe and check out my retro tabletop gameplay videos I upload every single Friday. Starting off, we have Venusaur and Celebi. It's Venusaur and Snivy. Venusaur Celebi is a different one. Venusaur Snivy is kind of a neat card. I like its ability. It allows you to gust. It has like a very vanilla, just 160, and Solar Plant GX is like 3 energy and does 50 spread. It's kind of cool. It's definitely like, the GX tech doesn't do like that cool of effects. The ability is just mainly holding up, and I like Snivy and Venusaur. They're both cool Pokemon. We're going to put it in C tier. Next up we have Braixen and Charizard. This one only has one attack, doing 180 and searching deck for any 3 cards, and then its GX attack accelerates 5 energy into play. And if you have an extra one, it, I believe, burns and confuses. So, I'm not a big fan of this one, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of Braixen or Charizard. Charizard is my least favorite Pokemon, in fact. This card was everywhere on the TCGO ladder for years, because it's, you know, every time a new fire card's released, it gets added to the repertoire of the welder decks on the ladder. Not that they're good decks, they're just decks that play like 30 different fire Pokemon and welder in them. So as for this card individually, it's just, I'm not a big fan of it. It's not horrible, it's not like completely offensive, it's just D tier. Then we have Blastoise and Piplup, another one that was seen quite heavily on the ladder, not very playable. Braixard was played a little bit, and like it was thrown into like Mewtwo decks because it could just copy its deck, which is kind of cool. As for Blastoise and Piplup, it does like 150, and you can accelerate up to 3 energy from your hand to your Pokemon in play, and heal 50 for each one you accelerate. And then I believe it does 250 and paralysis with the GX attack. It's okay. It's just like another one that's like kind of just okay. I'm not really sure why Remix Bout and going into Cosmic Eclipse really had to do another one based around all the starters. Didn't really feel like it needed to exist to me, but it's just okay. Next up we have Soleo and Lunala. This was played a little bit in the Psychic Mewtwo boxes. I believe that was Jit 2 for a while is what it was called. It doesn't attack, that just does a vanilla 230, and the GX attack, while kind of cool, prevents damage done to you if you used a Lily's Full Force during this turn. Unfortunately, Lily's Full Force is just a really bad card. Though a very pretty supporter, it is not at all playable. So you're mainly just putting it in a Mewtwo deck to use that first attack. I do actually really like the artwork on this one. Most of the tag teams are illustrated by Mitsuhiro Arita, but the tag teams featured in the Dream League set were illustrated by Naoki Saito, and I'm not sure if this is Sakuma, or I don't remember who illustrated this specific one, is what I'm saying. I know the Zekrom Reshiram is Naoki Saito. This card was, it's just kind of pretty. It's one I like to pull. I never like played it much, but it's cool. Next up we have Togepi, Igglybuff, and Cleffa GX. This is a card that I really feel like didn't need to exist. They were just kind of like testing their limits of what they can get away with when they're using this mechanic. So why don't we make a card on 3 baby Pokemon and make it absolutely terrible, unplayable garbage. I have seen it played before, but it is terrible, and like, this is probably the worst artwork out of any tag team. I know it's still an Arita artwork, but I just don't like it at all. F tier. Then we have ADP. This artwork is gorgeous, done by Mitsuhiro Arita once again. This one was hyper playable in both standard and expanded, completely changed the game around it. Ultimate rate is 150 and accelerates 3 energy into play, but mainly Altered Creation allows you to take an extra prize card with each knockout and do 30 more damage for the rest of the game, unless it is removed by something like a Pokemon Ranger, which was only an expanded, not standard. Still can't believe they didn't make like a playdown ability to stop this card, because it was not fun to play against. If you ever wanted to play a game of solitaire, this is a great card for you. You essentially do the same thing every single game, no matter what you're facing. You don't even have to read the cards, and if you somehow run into a card that just can't be hit by your guys, you just scoop the game, because, you know, reading's hard. This card had a irreversibly negative effect. All of the tag teams did, to be fair. Tag teams as a whole had an irreversibly negative effect on the game, but ADP was one of the ones with definitely the worst impact on the game. F tier, I hate it. Next we have Reshiram and Zekrom. This card fooled me. I thought it was going to be good at the time in the standard format. There was, first of all, Remix Bout was not, no, Altered Creation was not revealed, and Remix Bout was not revealed. So we didn't have these guys, and we didn't have ADP and Nagano Guzzlord. But we did see Dream League. Dream League had these two tag teams, Lily and Solgaleo, and the Reshiram Zekrom. And Reshiram Zekrom looked cracked because the best two types in standard format at that time, regards to support, were Electric and Fire, because Electric had things like Tapu Koko Prism Star, Raichu as a backup attacker, Electro Power. Well, that wouldn't work in this specific case. And then Welder had, Fire Crystal, Giant Hearth, Welder. So it was just like, it looked perfect, right? You take the two best types in the game, you mix them together into one card, and it kicks butt, right? No, unfortunately, it did not. I don't really hold a grudge against the card, though. It's still cool to play. I see people playing every now and then Expanded. It's a very cool card in functionality. And I love the artwork on this one. This is probably my favorite artwork. So this is going to go in S tier. I know it's not playable. This isn't a playability ranking. It's just one I quite like. Next up we have Nagano Guzzlord. This one's popped up in Expanded recently, but really wasn't playable for quite a while. In Expanded, it just offers a really good way to just take 2 prizes instantly, kind of just not have to read the cards. ADP decks have never changed. They just like, if they can't use Altered Creation because they know you're going to stop it, they're just going to take 2 prize cards, and then take 2 prize cards, and then take 2 prize cards, and the game will be over. This card doesn't have like a super negative impact on the game. I do think it's cool because it has that healing ability that allows you to discard a card from your hand, or I believe it's a Pokemon from your hand. I believe it has to be specifically a Pokemon, and you heal 60 damage, which can be pretty cool. The attack is just vanilla, doesn't really exist, but I do think the card on its surface, outside of like a Double Dragon and abused in ADP deck kind of thought process, it was like an actually pretty cool card. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Then we have Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff, the biggest one-hit wonder card we've probably seen in a while. Was really, really good for one format, and then the second Sword and Shield came out, its time was done, and that's because it did 60 plus 60 more for each GX and EX your opponent had in play. Obviously still did see some play in Expanded, but Standard it was like one and done. The GX attack is absolutely horrible. It was just used in Mewtwo to copy that attack, and that attack was pretty good in the Cosmic Eclipse format, but it immediately fell off afterward. It's another one of the ones that I really don't like the pairings much. I'm not a big fan of Jigglypuff. Lopunny is just kind of like whatever, I guess. I know it's Mega Lopunny, so it's supposed to be cooler because it's Mega, right? I don't really care that much. It's not my favorite. I'm going to put it in D tier. Then we have Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno, the famed Shaman killer. If you were around playing Expanded when Shaman was around, this card was everywhere because of its ability to just take out 3 Shamans instantly and win the game. And you would do that by using its GX attack, which does 110 to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon, and then shuffles this guy and all cards attached to it into your deck, which is kind of cool. The attack is just a vanilla 210. I gotta respect this card though. It is cool. It's obviously, I know it's illustrated by Mitsuya Arita, intentional or not, it definitely harkens back to the original Bird promos that he illustrated back in the day. I actually quite like this one, both art-wise and playability-wise. It's got a lot going for it, honestly, compared to other tags. We're going to put it in A tier. Next up we have Wailord and Magikarp. Well, not a standard staple, it was played in some stall decks, and it was also played in Expanded quite a bit because of Moist Mewtwo, aka Archie's Mewtwo. You put Blastoise into play with Archie's Ace in the hole, and then you accelerate a bunch of energy to Mewtwo to copy any of the GX attacks. This is a great one because its Towering Splash GX did 10 plus 100 each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Absurd energy at cost of, like, I believe 8 waters to pull it off. But with Mewtwo and Blastoise, you could pull it off and just win single prize matchups then and there. Also had just a vanilla attack for 180. This is one of the goofier pairings that I actually kind of like. I think it works well. I think the card is creative, if nothing else. I like that it's usable in stall. Wailord tends to do a lot of that in its history throughout the game, so we're going to put it in A tier. Next up we have Trevenant and Dusknoir, famous for getting probably like 5 cards at this point banned from the Expanded format, and maybe on its way to getting even more when Expanded comes back. because it's very playable right now. This is great for its Night Watch attack that does 150 for 3 psychics, and your opponent shovels 2 cards from their hand into their deck. You essentially want to just put your opponent to 0 cards in hand, not allow them to find anything, and win the game instantly. And that's what it did when it was out. There was a combo used where you'd put yourself down to 1 prize card. No, that was Tina Chomp that did that. You put yourself to 3 prize cards here, shuffle your opponent down, and then get rid of their hand. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Actually, Tina Chomp's the one that got 5 cards banned. This got Milotic banned. Because Milotic would just powerless up on 1 turn, get the 3 energy into play. Now you do that with Shadow Rider. Expanded's basically unmonitored for bans right now. I don't think this guy's the root of the problem, though, when it comes to the decks and Expanded right now. It's just kind of a cool card, if you ask me. I'm a big fan of Dusknoir. I don't like Trevenant, but the artwork on this one is particularly good for a tag team. I'm going to put it in A tier. Next up, we have Celebisaur. This one was at the very beginning of the tag teams, immediately fell off playability-wise in the standard format, because one set after it came out came a bunch of fire cards that destroyed the game, and this thing doesn't like fire. It played as a tanking deck where you'd play a bunch of healing cards and just use its attacks, and then Evergreen GX would shuffle all those healing cards back into your deck, which is pretty cool. It was one of the cooler tag team play styles. Honestly, I wish more tag teams played like this instead of just, oh, do big damage, win game instantly if use GX tech. Like, that's not fun. This one's more fun. Artwork's one of my less favorite of the tag teams, even though it does have Celebi on it. It's not that well illustrated Celebi, honestly. I mean, it's well illustrated, it's just not a style I like for Celebi. So, A tier, yeah. Then we have Pikarom. Arguably number 1 or number 2 for the most playable tag team with Mewtwo. If you say ADP is the most playable tag team, you are lying. I know it's still playable now. That's just for the effect. Mewtwo and Mew and Pikarom were the most playable. In fact, Mewtwo and Mew, I'd say, because Mewtwo and Mew is like 8 of the top 16 decks in any given format that it was legal in. Pikarom was super playable for a while. Turn 1 Full Blitz, 150 Accelerate, 3 energy into play. Turn 2 Tag Bolt. This thing essentially wiped evolution decks off of the map, as well as at the time there was the Beast Box deck with Zapdos that came out, and just all of these single prizers that did good damage, and especially Buzzwole would knock out the Pikarom. So it just became impossible to play evolution Pokemon very safely when every deck was out to big basics out there, either one-shotting you or one-shotting things that one-shot you, and then being too fast for you, with things like Zapdos. So, definitely a negative impact. One of the first tag teams. Wouldn't be as negative as things later to come, like Reshiram and Charizard, and the Mewtwo Mew, and Arceus Dialga Poke, which really just destroyed the game. But it was definitely negative. It's one of the better art-wise ones. I really do like this. It's very cool artwork. So we're going to put it in B tier. Then we have the Gengar Mimikyu. This one currently, well, it was in Standard. It only saw a small bit of play in the Shadow Rider deck in Standard. It has gone on to further that legacy in the Expanded format, where Shadow Rider is the best deck, almost all in part due to Gengar Mimikyu, giving it a free turn of setup. The deck is more inconsistent than you'd hope, honestly, because a lot of times you just don't get a very good setup going turn 1, even if you do get the Horror House off. But if you do get the Horror House off and get a setup going, you essentially win the game then and there, because nothing's stopping you. It does have the Poltergeist attack. I hate the Poltergeist attack. Not that it's like, I know it's a thing you can play around, but like the fact that they put you 7 cards in hand and then do it. I've lost games on the spot just to them taking an extra turn and then just one-hit killing my only guy in play, which I'm not a big fan of. Essentially have to have multiple guys in play just to play around this one card. Definitely negative for the game. Very bad card for the sake of the game. F tier, not fun to play against, would not recommend. Then we have Latias and Latios, one of the least playable tag teams. This one was downright garbage. Didn't really do much in competitive. 240 for 4 energy. Yes, it OHKOs some Pokemon like some of the opposing tag teams, some of the weaker ones rather, like Pikachu, Zekrom. And yes, it does 270 with the Choice Band and can OHKO Reshiram, Charizard, and all that. But which is never good, even though it's GX Tech Accelerate Energy into play, it's just unreliable from a game-to-game basis. It does have a nice alternate art, but this is definitely one of the derpiest regular arts. Gonna put it in D tier. Then we have Eevee Snorlax. This art's kind of fun. Snorlax is just a very fun Pokemon in general. Not sure why Eevee, other than popular Gen 1 Pokemon, which is essentially the whole like thing with this tag team Pokemon. They're just throw two popular Pokemon together, or a Pokemon that we need to promote plus another popular Pokemon. So that's kind of what they did. As for this card itself, was not fun to play against. It was not a very good card, but you saw it every now and then, and it's just kind of dumb. It just hits evolutions for bigger damage, which is like Y, D tier. Then we have Buzzmosa. Buzzmosa has like the typical Buzzwole attack, the Jet Punch for 30 and 30. The card did see some play in some Grass Mewtwo variants. Then we have the 190 for 3, which isn't bad, and then Beast Game does 50 for 1, and if you take a knockout with it, depending on how many energy you have, you get to take extra prizes. This honestly was a pretty cool card in the Grass Mewtwo boxes. I do gotta respect it for that. I think we're gonna move Pikarom down and move this up, just because I really did like the play style of this card, even if it is a tag team. Next up we have Reshizard, F tier, one of the worst cards to ever release in the game. Just promoted the dumbest style of play style possible, where you just go turn 1 Welder, knockout, turn 2, knockout, and then switch, turn 3, knockout. Really, really bad for the game. The card has an outrage tag, meaning if single prizers just could not stand up to it because they just get mowed over by outrage, and its attacks are just super payable. Not usually one-shots in other tag teams, usually 2-shots. But one-shots in anything that's weak, meaning that everything that was grass type was super unviable for a long time. Everything that metal type was really struggling too, for quite some time, until we got coating metal way later on. Next up we have Alolan Muck and Muck. This one saw some play in Mewtwo Mew because of its poison attack, but it's otherwise probably the most like unnoticeable tag team. Like, it's kind of just there. D tier. Then we have a Champion Marshadow. This one's got a really fun artwork where they're like throwing 100 punches at the screen, and I really like that. The card itself didn't really do much. C tier. Greninja Zoroark. This one was quite fun to play, both in Standard and Expanded. Didn't see play in Standard till its later life, when we got cards around in the Sword and Shield era that helped out Dark types. This one came around with Mewtwo again to wreak some havoc. And Expanded, it was pretty much good from day one until about Evolving Skies, when the expanded format got massively power crept again with Volcarona V and 80 Dragonite coming out. This card was super good though, because Expanded has things like Dark Patch and Battle Compressor with Darkrai GX, Ultra Ball, Galarian Moltres. This card really has a variable toolbox, and at that point had a few other tag team attackers to help it out too. So this was a pretty fun card to play. Definitely weaker on the artwork. I don't like that's how it's just divided in the middle, and they're just there. They're not like doing anything. It's just a divide in the middle, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely one of my more liked tag teams. Then we have Lucario and Melmetal. This one was one of the only tag teams that actually promoted good gameplay styles, because it drug out games and made them very long, and it had lots of healing. It was like a bona fide healing deck in the modern era, which you really don't see that often, especially since we haven't gotten Max Potion reprinted. So Max Potion's been out of the game for about 4 years now, and you see sometimes Cheryl decks popping up here and there, but they're really not taking the top spots that they should be, when in reality, like, healing decks are both a fundamental part of the game's history. If you look to like eras like 2010, 2004, these eras have a lot of healing decks because they made good healing cards back then, and they're really, really fun to play. Sometimes a little flippy, depending on which kind of healing deck you're playing. But the games they make are actually good. Unfortunately, it was paired with Zacian, which is a very dumb card. Smart card, very dumb card, just because you need the best metal Pokemon around. But it was still definitely better than the rest of the tag teams for the sake of the game. It's also used to control for its GX attack that discarded energy and made you take 30 less for the rest of the game, which is pretty good. Yeah, we're going to put it in A tier. Then we have Guardian here, Gardevoir Sylveon. This one was about as simple as it could get in terms of its strategy. You accelerate Fairy Energy to play, move them around and heal with Kaleidoscope or Kaleido Beam or something like that. And then Magical Miracle GX, if you could power it up for 6 energy, would get rid of your opponent's entire hand and essentially say, I'm going to win here and now, you better draw something. So this definitely had some toxic strategies over the years and expanded. I do think it had a very good run in Standard, making some very cool decks. Not cool in the fact that you're only running 4 Pokemon, but the decks were cool because I got to utilize the Green's Exploration Supporter for their benefit. The artwork on this was a little derpy, but that's just my take. B tier. Then we have Rowlet and Roland Executor. Currently still an expanded Titan, one of the last tag teams really holding out after the insane power creep that we saw in Evolving Skies for the expanded format. Because it evolves a grass Pokemon immediately into a Stage 2, allowing you to put powerful Stage 2s like Vileplume into play, potentially winning the game then and there. Definitely not a fun card to play against, honestly. I do think that like there's some things about the deck that are just like, it's like kind of inconsistent, but they also just always have it because of Tag Call, so I'm not a huge fan of playing against this deck. I've played the deck myself and it's like not my favorite just because the games go really slow, and sometimes on the expanded ladder you'll just run into someone who just has the exact thing to get through your deck or just has some really stupid play that just completely destroys your strategy. It definitely falls apart like House of Cards because it's not a very stable strategy, but it is cool. It had some time in Standard where it was seeing play with Mewtwo when Rillaboom came out. We saw a Grass Standard Mewtwo variant seeing play. We're going to go C tier with that one. Next up we have Slowduck. This one, probably the least playable of all the tag teams, maybe with Igglybuff here. You discard any amount of supporters from your hand. It does 40 for each one you discarded. And the combo was that you use that, and then there was a Lapras that could get back Misty's Favor from your discard pile. Misty's Favor would search out more supporters, so you just put down like 4 Lapras, get 4 Misty's Favor, search out 3 more supporters, then you have automatically 6 to discard, doing 240. It was a fun little gimmick, and it had like thrilling times where like flip like 8 coins, something like that, just 100 for each heads. It's a proper job gimmick in its entirety. One of my favorite tag team arts, honestly. I can't hate this card. It's so dumb. I love it. Then we have Raichu and Alolan Raichu, very playable with Pikarom for a long time. Just great paralysis, is very strong. Doing 116 paralysis, very, very good. It was bulkier than Pikarom, so it can be a deck's anchor. If you are facing a Psychic matchup and can't use Mewtwo, it can be your anchor in that matchup and take some hits. It was definitely a cooler playstyle. However, it did, of course, exist at the same time as Team Up Jirachi. So a lot of times it was just like you weren't really like switching around and building around that. You were just building around Jirachi anyway, so you just had the switches already there. So it didn't really make a difference in deck building. We're gonna put it in C tier. Then we have Mewtwo and Mew GX, arguably the other best. I'd argue the best tag team GX. It did win Worlds, but more importantly than that, like I said earlier, if you look at any format where Mewtwo and Mew was legal, just about up until Chilling Reign, it was like 8 of the top 16 decks in any format. You'd see like a Fire Mewtwo with Reshizard, you'd see like a Grass Mewtwo with Alolan Executor, you'd see Lightning Mewtwo with Pikarom and Raichu, you'd see Dark Mewtwo with Greninja Zoroark, you'd see the Psychic Mewtwo with like the Solgaleo, Lunala, Gengar, Mimikyu, all of those, like, and then Water Mewtwo and Expanded, right? Like, like I said, this card was everywhere. It did everything because it can use any attack of any GX or EX in play or in your discard pile, which is absurd because like even if they start a like bad starter, you can still use its attacks. Where a lot of times things like this would only be limited to in play or limited to discard pile. No, it does it all. And Perfection GX is actually not bad. I think it's like Miraculous Duo GX, something like that. Just removes all damage from like all of your Pokemon in play. No big deal, right? Yeah, this card playability wise is like S plus. As for its effect on the game, I did like kind of enjoy it, but I also kind of didn't like it. We're just gonna put it in B tier, nice middle ground. Espeon and Deoxys, frequently a part of the Psychic Mewtwo decks for its Psychic Club attack. Did more damage to your Psychic Pokemon in play. Also had a really cool spread attack, but only use 1 per game. Really means that it's not like an effective spread attack in the way that something like Sableye would be nowadays, where you're building your whole deck around that. It's just an option to use with its other good Psychic Club attack. I like the art on this one, honestly. We're going to put it in B tier. Then we have Umbreon and Darkrai, part of the Dark Box deck that would be played with Greninja, Zoroark, and Mewtwo. Black Lance to 150 and 61 your opponent's bench Pokemon, and Dark Moon for 6 energy would instantly KO them and prevent them from playing trainers. This one's one of my favorite ones to play because just getting that early Dark Moon could just win you a game pretty fast. shut your opponent down, and give you time to power up even a second attacker if you're using it pretty early in the game. It's got probably the best artwork out of any tag team other than Reshiram and Zekrom, honestly, so I'm going to put this one in S tier. I just really enjoyed it personally. Then we have Tyranitar and Mega Sableye. This one is a whole gimmick, but it did fit into these Dark Mewtwo decks again. 250 for 5 energy. If you knock out a GX or EX, though, it's got to take an extra prize, which is pretty good. And then it's GX attack. If you had like 10 energy attached, ridiculous, you'd mill the top 10 cards of your opponent's deck. I've seen it done for wins. It is a bit absurd, but it's kind of a goofy card that I do at least enjoy. I'm going to put it in C tier. Then we have Tina Chomp. This is the tag team that did actually, not Trevenar. Trevenar got 1 card banned. This is the one that got like 5 different cards banned and expanded, and is still seeing play today. Arguably the best tag team and expanded right alongside Arceus Palkia and Gengar Mimikyu. This card, though, unlike Arceus Palkia and Dragonite V and all these other dragon types and expanded, has a lot more game to it in both playing against it and playing with it. There's a lot more options and a lot more creative deck building that goes into using this than not reading the cards and just winning the game in 3 turns. So actually, I like this card more than Gengar Mimikyu and more than ADP for like the most toxic tag teams. It did, however, get lots of cards banned because of a ridiculous combo where it'd go down to 1 prize card on turn 1 by killing off its own board, then shuffle you down to 1 card in hand, get rid of that card in hand, and just start hitting for 240 damage on the first turn. And you have no cards in hand and a bad top deck. So that's why it got stuff banned. It's kind of a crazy card, but I can't entirely hate it. We're going to put it in C tier. So that's my tag team cards. I talked a lot about playability because these cards did irreparably destroy the standard format that was before it. Before tag teams came out, the game was really, really good. And ever since they came out, the game's been much, much worse. The game was definitely way, way worse when these were legal and standard. Thankfully, they're rotated now, so I only have to see them every once in a while and expanded. So that's why a lot of this went to playability instead of like talking about the art like I do for a lot of other of these tier lists, because I do have negative experiences with a lot of these. Thank you guys though so much for watching. If you did enjoy this tier list video, make sure to check out my other tier lists and check out my retro tabletop content that I upload every single Friday. Maybe subscribe to the channel, leave a like while you're at it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next